folks. I'm joined today by a very special guest, Paola Santana, a lawyer, scholar, government procurement expert, tech entrepreneur, and founder and CEO of Glass, a digital marketplace for government purchases. Paola, how are you doing today?
Hi, César. I'm doing great. Very excited to share with you what we're doing at Glass and how we're aiming to transform governments through government procurement.
It's great to hear that. So, Paula, your resume it is very long and very diverse. So, my first question to you is, okay, let's begin speaking about your journey. Why why make the jump from the world of law and public policy to tech entrepreneurship? Why make that move?
The best way to explain that is exactly what we are doing now at Glass. Basically, we're using our passion. My passion has always been government, public sector transformation. I work at the National Elections Court back in the Dominican Republic. I had the opportunity to co-establish the first constitutional court in the Dominican Republic from scratch. I won a Fulbright scholarship to figure out what was the future of governments. And eventually I got into Washington, D.C., that is the political mecca, trying to understand, what's the future for these institutions. And what I find is a very sophisticated system that is very slow to create change at the pace that our societies need. I do a step back and I ask a bigger question. What system is creating massive positive change in our lifetime that I can see, that I can feel that impact today? And I find technology. I found technology companies building infrastructure, building devices, building tools that allowed people to accelerate the rate at where they were introducing change in society. So I thought maybe this system is better at creating massive transformative change in the world, and maybe I should go into Silicon Valley, learn how to build technology, transformative technology, and then bring that technology back into governments.
So let's speak about Glass. What's the story behind the company? How did the idea begin? How did it take form? How long did it take? And when did it happen?
So the idea behind Glass is basically to target something very technical, very complex, very opaque in governments, that is government procurement. Because we're experts in government procurement, that expertise has a double-edged sword. You see things very clearly, very specifically. At the same time, you are in the middle of your own breakthrough because you know so much that you cannot simplify things, or you cannot actually find ways to bypass all this knowledge. So as we say in Glass, we're constantly learning and unlearning, uh, basically with the aim to do something better for that specific vertical that we're trying to focus on. We chose procurement because for us, governments are not about what they say they're going to do, is what they actually end up implementing. And what they end up implementing and doing and building in our societies is where they allocated budget for and where they executed that budget. And execution of the budget, a big chunk of that is procurement. Governments spend around $16 trillion in the world globally in public procurement processes, and they are the largest purchasers in the world. So the question is, where are the largest purchasers in the world investing our public resources? And then inside procurement, we were trying to understand, being a Silicon Valley-based company, we were trying to understand what is a low-hanging fruit, like what is an overlooked problem that governments are not necessarily paying attention, where there is not enough data, and where the lack of data doesn't mean that the problem doesn't exist. It just means that we have not been able to really attack the pain from an efficiency point of view and other points of view, return on investment and whatnot. So we discovered micro purchases. We discovered small purchases that are those done under a specific threshold in government procurement processes, and that usually are done in a very discretionary fashion. They sometimes are done with petty cash. Petty cash exists still in the world. Sometimes they're done with credit cards. sometimes with direct purchase orders coming out of the financial system. And the interesting thing about small purchases is that they're done in so many different ways that they're supposed to be a one-off type of purchases, but these one-off type of purchases happen at every department, every day, all around the world, in every government entity, in every government level, federal, state, local, hybrid. And when we aggregated them, we discovered a $4 trillion market that is mostly done manually, and that takes the same amount of paperwork, training, time, and personnel as the multi-million-dollar purchases that we're doing through the public procurement traditional system. And the aha moment was like, if we aggregate all these small purchases, can we advance public policy by helping public policy be executed in with less personnel, less amount of time and paperwork, and then optimize those purchases towards the backbone of our country's economies that are small businesses. And that's where we were like, oh my gosh, we have a tool of socioeconomic power in our hands by redirecting all these small spend of $4 trillion into the no-brainer backbone of the economy that are small and local businesses. They're seeing this as something they had not thought in this fashion that we are packaging it, but they see it very complementary to the procurement platform that they use today for their big traditional public bidding procurement. They're like, okay, I have a piece of software for my big bidding, and now I have a piece of software to simplify, aggregate, and digitize my small purchases. So they are very receptive to this.
I'm very curious about your experience as a tech platform with government as a user, because in the end, that's what you guys are. You're a tech platform that provides a service, and the government is, if not your customer outright, it is a user. So, how has been your experience with governments as users of a tech service?
Governments are our users and our customers as well. So we because we operate the platform in a marketplace fashion. Sometimes we operate it in a software as a service fashion. It depends how the users want to consume the technology. So we need to package it in a way that it creates very little friction with their current processes and their current regulation and mandates and whatnot. Our experience is that it takes effort to understand all these processes, and then to find the minimum viable um, process where we can kick off, and the best department to kick off and whatnot. But once we go through that onboarding and the new kickoff of the initiative, it continues to be adopted department by department. So we want to be very mindful of government changes, government transformation, and innovation, because governments are doing so many things and trying to keep the world operating, that we cannot just introduce technology in the way that a startup, with the agility that we have, we can just, take some feedback, fix something, and ship it 1 hour later. Governments are not in that position to take all that fast-paced change, and they shouldn't, because they need to consider much more stuff than startups trying to just optimize for this little process, where governments are trying to see, like, how does this affect my finance system? How does this affect the budget? How does this affect my actual larger socioeconomic goals when I need to balance out affordability of services, or best price or lowest price with, I want to recirculate these taxpayers' dollars. So, and actually, how do I tell all my personnel that I just trained them on a specific process to now just forget about that specific process? And this is something that probably you can relate as a human. Even though we think it's easy to change, it's very hard to change. Even when you try to change one thing in your routine, like waking up a little bit earlier or going to work out every day, if you're not doing that, it takes some, not just willpower, but some, like, processes in place. So we are meeting governments where they want to meet us, where they can meet us with the personnel they have, the current processes they have, and the current software they have. And when we have that empathy with our government leadership that is implementing the use of glass commerce, we have amazing results. That has been the outcome with the city of Seattle. Like, we've experimented in a couple of things. We've done a couple of things that work for them. We have learned some things that do not work for them. And we have been able to have open, respectful conversations that are bringing the convenience of e-commerce, but with the levels of compliance that governments need to have in order to respond to the general public on how they're spending public money.